Check. Check.
Appreciate your patience. We will begin very shortly. Thank you.
Sure. Check.
Good afternoon. May I request everyone in the audience to please take their seats? Please be seated. Thank you. May I please request everyone in the audience to quickly take their seats? Members of the audience in the back, please remain seated. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. We move now into the final part of the program of this year's conference, the valedictory session of the Asia Economic Dialogue 2023. We are absolutely delighted to have as chief guest His Excellency Mr. Piyush Goyal, the Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. Dr. Vidya Yaravdekar, Pro-Chancellor of Symbiosis International University, will serve as chair of this session. I invite Dr. Yaravdekar to introduce the Honorable Chief Guest and open the session. Thank you. Welcome, Honorable Minister Goyal and Dr. Yaravdekar. I invite Dr. Yaravdekar to kindly introduce the Honorable Minister and open the session. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all the august members sitting here, our Honorable Minister for Commerce, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, Dr. Mashelkar, many stalwarts who are sitting here in the audience, and I don't think I can take names of each and every person. So, but this is the intellectual capital of Pune that you see in front of you. I'm not going to introduce you, I'm not going to introduce a minister to you because I'm sure everybody here in Maharashtra and Pune know him, and we're very, very happy that, we have our person there in Delhi at such an important portfolio. And the second reason is, of course, a personal reason. I've interacted with him on several occasions. He may not remember, but I sit as a governing board member of the Services Export Promotion Council, sir. I had the education vertical, and the excellent speeches, talks, interactions that you do with us as members is something that, we really look forward to. So that's my second connection with you. Honestly, I don't know why Ambassador Gautam Bambawale has asked me to chair this session, and I'm an academic. I really don't have to do anything with trade and commerce, but he thinks that I'm fit to do this session, so I'm doing it. And we are in exciting times, I think, all of us as Indians, and I would say more specifically young Indians who I connect with, our students, are in really exciting times. So much so that many of us as teachers feel that we should go back to classes and sit with them and enjoy this excitement. And this excitement is because of all the great work that all of you are doing, sir, in the government. We see how the Indian economy is growing, 3 trillion economy to an aspirational 5 trillion, and maybe by India at 100, we touch what US is now. So we just hear these figures, but we also have this hope when we talk to industry people over here that, this is possible and surely possible. We have several questions from the audience, and we're going to make this session very interactive than a monologue. But of course, we would like to hear more from you before we actually open this to the audience. The Asia Economic Dialogue, as I'm sure you've been briefed about, this is the 4th edition. And this is something which is a brainchild of Dr. Mashelkar, Ambassador Bambawale, and others in the Pune International Center. So PIC is another think tank that you may have heard of. And it is similar to IIC. We only hope that, we have diverse speakers, diverse audience. Unlike many times in Delhi, we have the same speakers and the same audience. So we've tried to bring something out of Delhi and do this here in Pune. And if you see, in the audience here today, and even as speakers, we have people from all over India and many of them from foreign countries as well. So we try and make these talks very interesting, these talks very interactive. And we are very happy that you accepted to be here for the valedictory function. Over the last 2 days, we've had excellent speakers, right from the External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, who was here. And, he spoke about G20 and, of course, what it means to all of us as citizens of this country. He also spoke to our students, and it was very exciting to have him almost like a rock star there and a hero here. So he's been referred to, with these adjectives, and several other eminent people from the public sector as well as private sector. So today we are here to listen to you. I will not say there's lots for me to say, but I will not. And I will keep some of my questions also posed to you after your brief talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vidya. My respects to Professor Dr. Mashelkar. I think somebody we have all looked up to as one of the most towering personalities India has ever produced. And as a citizen of the country, I can say that you really make all of us proud with your work, with your knowledge. I have a number of other friends I can see here, including my former colleague, Anup Madhavan, who was Commerce Secretary with me. A very big privilege for me to be able to interact with all of you distinguished ladies and gentlemen on a subject which is extremely relevant and contemporary. Of course, I've been to the Pune International Center for a dialogue or an interaction many years ago. I don't know whether it was before I became a minister or after I became a minister, but around that time. So I'm coming after many years, and I'm also coming after interacting with students at the Flame University. So it's been a very, very enjoyable morning for me, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with you on what's happening in the geopolitical space and how it has impacted the economies of our region. I think a lot is known to all of us. The world is in turmoil. Soon after the pandemic, we landed up with a conflict in Ukraine. Russia-Ukraine conflict has had a severe impact on the developed world more than the developing countries. And in two particular aspects, it has had a devastating effect across the world for both developing and developed countries. That's food security and energy security. And the consequential impact it has had on inflation, the interest rate movement, slowing growth, the whole cycle which we have seen happen in the past, which fortunately we had almost overcome very quickly after COVID. But this conflict has brought us back, or in fact brought us even worse off than we were pre-COVID. Asia, of course, has its own dynamics. It's a very complicated region. We have economic growth in Asia. I think the last IMF report mentioned that almost 50% of global growth is going to come out of Asia in 2023, as against only 10% coming from the developed world of Europe and the US. We have economies which are both democracies, and we have economies which are non-transparent, non-rule based on our northern borders. We have significant conflicts across Asia. The India-China problem, the India-Pakistan problem. Russia, of course, likes to call itself a European nation, even though I think most of their territories are almost a part of the Asian continental belt. And over the years, we started off as a non-aligned country, probably leaned closer or leaned more on the socialist thinking and the left of the center thinking over the years. Post 91, we tried to evolve as a market-based economy, but it always looked to be a half-baked effort until in the last decade or so, we've been seeing the country wanting to internationalize our work, engage with technology, engage with modern way of working. And I think today, India is clearly recognized as the country of the decade, if not the country of the 21st century. I'm glad you raised the issue about where India would be going forward. We've already moved from the 10th largest economy in the last 9 years to the 5th largest in terms of size of GDP. We are today probably the most populous nation in the world with a young demographic dividend. And I think the young demography of India, which at one point of time we used to be worried as a severe drag on the economy, today is being recognized the world over as our biggest asset. And I'll try to explain that in a minute or two. But clearly, the 5th largest economy in terms of size is not our rightful place in the Committee of Nations. I would suspect that in the next 4 years or so, at best 5 years, we'll be the 3rd largest economy in terms of GDP in dollar terms. And I don't think by 2047, we'll be where the US is today. My own maths, my own calculations, and my own conviction about the way India is growing, about the foundational work that has happened in the last 8 or 9 years in terms of preparing the nation to engage with the rest of the world in our Amrit Kal, the next 25 years, gives me the confidence to suggest that India will be in a business as usual case, at least a $32 trillion economy, much larger than US is today. But given the young aspirational Indian, the talent that we have, the fire in the belly of the Indian of today, our 1.4 billion population is going to drive this economy probably closer to a $35–40 trillion economy by 2047. And if I may take a leap out of an engagement, I had a similar engagement a couple of months ago in Bangalore with the Startup Advisory Council that we have set up, where we have young and emerging startups, we have unicorns, we have venture financiers, we have persons associated with the entire ecosystem of the startups. In that, I had ventured to suggest a $30–32 trillion economy by 2047. And a lady in the room actually said, sir, if we are looking at 2047, our aspiration to be a $47 trillion economy by 2047. And I loved it. That's the young person of today. That's the aspiration. That's the desire of every Indian, that we want to be second to none. And it's eminently possible, eminently doable. And the Asia Economic Dialogue would have surely, and I saw some of the breadth of subjects you have covered over the last 3 days, would have got a flavor of where India stands and how the world is looking at India. I remember, I'll give you a case in point, 2019, when I was appointed in the Commerce and Industry Ministry, we were engaged in the discussions on joining the RCEP group of nations. Anup was with me at that point of time. Of course, our views differed very significantly, and having gone through the files and studying what had been discussed or what was being offered to India as a part of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, where we had China, we had the 10 ASEAN countries, we had New Zealand and Australia, and we had Japan and Korea. So it was a group of 15 countries plus India. We were the 16th. And we were in some way an outlier, not only because of our geopolitical tensions with China, but also because we already had trading arrangements or a free trade agreement with the 10 ASEAN countries, with Japan and Korea, so 12 in the box. Australia, we had been engaged for a long time until it got aborted because they said that if we are doing RCEP, we don't need to have a separate FTA. And New Zealand is so far off and remote that we only do some $300 million worth of bilateral trade with New Zealand. And their only interest is in dairy, and our big interest is in stopping dairy from there. I engage with stakeholders all over the country. I promise you, except for a handful, and in that handful, I can't even remember whether there was a handful who said we should join RCEP. I don't even understand why we threw ourselves under the bus, because we were not an original part of RCEP. It was somewhere in 2012 or so that the then government decided to offer itself to become a part of RCEP. And to my mind, it was ill-conceived, an absolute disaster in the making. Because we were entering into a free trade agreement with our eyes open, with a non-transparent economy, where there's no rule of law, where there's no court of appeal, where the country's most prominent businessman just disappears overnight. And even till date, we don't know what's happened of him. Where businesses were forced to transfer technology if they wanted to work there, and where there was absolutely no democracy or rule of law which could give relief if any wrongdoing was happening to you. And while, of course, the entire arrangements that were sought to be done between China and India were against India's national interest, it would have actually been the death knell of all manufacturing in India. It would have completely killed any manufacturing capabilities that we had or we sought to create in the years to come. And my own experience is that China blocks the doors for imports from India through a variety of measures, non-tariff, most of them. And we in India have over the years become weaker and started enjoying the low cost, low quality goods. It's somewhat like a drug, not drug as in medicine, like opium, that over the years, we have made our own set of people so much used to low cost, even though substandard products, that in the process, we have hurt India, we have hurt India's interests. What used to be a bilateral trade, if Anup may remember better than me, of only $2 billion 20 years ago, where we used to have a trade deficit of under $1 billion 16, 17 years ago. We have landed up mortgaging India's interests to China. And I know between 2004 and 14, I don't want to politicize the issue, but in that period, our trade deficit with China increased from just about $1 billion and a half dollars to $48 billion. And we almost had an open sesame. We allowed everything to come in from China, whereas they stopped us every product from India through legitimate or non-legitimate reasons. Wherever we tried to stop any Chinese products, we had two problems. We had the Indian business persons who would lobby and not allow us to do that, or we had a situation where Indian manufacturing could not compete because their cost of production had no reference or relevance to their cost of transfer of goods to India. And therefore, it was music to my ears when Prime Minister Modi decided to not join RCEP on 4th of November 2019. Anup was in that room with me that day. But I tell you, across the country, every section of industry and business, every farmer, every person associated with dairy celebrated and heaved a sigh of relief that we've not thrown ourselves under the bus and landed up doing a free trade agreement with China. So we have a continent where there's so much divergence in economic philosophy, economic principles, way of working. They have, of course, got the fruits of being a dictatorship or a communist regime, but at the cost of human development. I mean, after all, in India, we cannot just pick up 1 million people and dishouse them or relocate them because a large furniture plant has to come up or a large furniture cluster has to come up somewhere. India believes in the rule of law. We believe in protecting the people's interests, their right to property, their right to liberty, their right to freedom of expression. And therefore, we have a situation in Asia where very different economic philosophies coexist. We are fighting against an economic system where, without having adequate access for our goods, we are allowing, and it'll take some time before we can create adequate systems in place and adequate domestic manufacturing capacity, and also sensitize our people and our businesses to wean ourselves away from that opium, which is low cost, low quality goods, non-transparently priced coming into India from China. And I do hope the Pune International Center will play an important role to sensitize our people to the evils or to the risks that we have placed ourselves upon ourselves by this kind of trading relationship, which until 2001 or 2 was extremely low, probably $1 billion of bilateral trade, under 2 or 3 billion or 4 billion by 2004, and then has shot up to $100 billion today. I would also like to say that today the world recognizes India's strengths. I was alluding to a situation in 19 where Anup and I were trying to tell Europe, trying to tell other countries of the Western world that we want to do free trade agreements with them, but they would just brush us away. They didn't have the confidence about India. COVID, in some sense, what Prime Minister Modi did, converting the crisis into an opportunity, opened the world's eyes towards what India is and what the strengths of India are. The way COVID was handled in India, the way we were able to save lives, our ability to innovate and come out with vaccines, produce vaccines, distribute and vaccinate the entire population. We've had 2.2 billion free vaccine doses to our citizens. I think it's a world record. Nobody would have done 220 crore vaccines in such a short period of time, all indigenously manufactured at a cost which is probably the lowest in the world. Today we have 4 or 5 or 6 vaccines, and you are the vaccine city in large measure. Punekar should be very proud about that. Though I took a vaccine made by Bharat Biotech. And at that point of time, when we had to decide which one to take, Covaxin or Covishield, my wife used a very simple formula. She said, look, all our life, we've got vaccines made by Bharat Biotech. All our children are pumped with vaccines made by Bharat Biotech. We'll trust Bharat Biotech. And so we are, all of us in the family, Covaxin takers, but not to say that Covishield is any less. Both these vaccines have done India proud, made in India, one of course discovered and created in India also. And they have really served the nation honorably. Similarly, during COVID, we did not let down a single international commitment. So while there was lockdown, there were all sorts of difficulties. Our Indian exporters, both of goods and services, met every single international commitment. That's the strength of Bharat. And therefore, today, the world looks at India as a trusted partner. I remember Prime Minister Modi using this phrase in Rome in 2021 at the G20 meeting, where he offered to the world our friendship and India as an important element of their supply chains, as an honest, transparent, rules-based trading partner, and as a partner they could trust. And that trusted partner is what the world today is looking for. And India is seeing the fruits of that. We had the highest ever exports last year, 21-22, $675 billion worth of exports in a year, with services at 254 billion, all-time high. Merchandise exports at 422 billion, all-time high. And collectively, we were able to demonstrate to the world that despite COVID, India and Indian businesses can do wonders. And therefore, today we have a situation, friends, where we did the fastest ever FTA in the history of the world. 88 days, start to finish. The UAE-India Comprehensive Economic Partnership was settled, finalized, and signed from launch to finish. Australia technically took a little longer. We launched in September 21, signed on 2nd April. But if you look back between September and December 21, first we had a COVID wave, then Australia had COVID, They locked down their entire country. There was a compulsory 14-day quarantine in Australia. Then Christmas came in. So till December, we didn't have a single meeting to further the India-Australia FTA. On 31st December, I saw Sydney Harbour all lit up and maybe 500,000 people on the streets. So called up my counterpart, Dan Tehan, and said, hey, you guys seem to be out of COVID. Let's get down to negotiating the FTA. So we decided on 31st December night to have a VC on the 4th of January. And from 4th January, the first VC, to 2nd April, when we signed the first part of our economic partnership, ECTA, Economic Comprehensive Trade Agreement, ECTA, the Unity Agreement as it is known in Australia. And if you calculate 4th January to 2nd April, it's less than 88 days of actual negotiations and finalization. So that's the kind of enthusiasm the world today is demonstrating in wanting to work with Asia's emerging powerhouse, because they realize that depending on one geography has cost them dear. And they recognize that India as a transparent rule-based economy would be a safer bet, would be a more resilient supply chain participant, a more honest economy to work with. And therefore, today we have negotiations going on with Israel. We have negotiations going on with UK. We have negotiations going on with the 27-country EU. Negotiations for an early progress trade agreement, EPTA, are going on with Canada. The 6-nation GCC, of which UAE we've already finalized. The other 5 want to now come into a GCC India free trade agreement. The 4-block EPTA, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, I don't know how to pronounce it, pardon me for that, Norway, and Iceland, probably 4 countries. I may be making a mistake. They are at my neck to start launch negotiations. I don't have the bandwidth in the Commerce Ministry to handle anymore. And the Russia and its partner countries of, what is that, EAEU, they also want to fast track negotiations. This is India today. This is India's strength today. And I hope that's the message the Asia Economic Dialogue will take to the rest of the world. In India, the business world and the economists. Be proud about your achievements. Be proud that we have strong macroeconomic fundamentals. Be proud about the reform done over the last few years, which have created a strong foundation on which we believe India is not only today the world's fastest growing large economy, we will continue to be the fastest growing large economy, not for the rest of the decade, but for many, many decades to come. India has awakened. India has arisen. India today works with the rest of the world from a position of strength. And India today is recognized the world over as the trusted Asian partner to have, as the country and the leader. You read every day, the world looking up to the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. His comment, this is not an era of war, resonates with the rest of the world. They hope he will be able to find a solution to the problems that the world is facing currently. And I do believe it's the power of 1.4 billion Indians behind him, which today gives him the ability to work with the world, to showcase India's strengths to the rest of the world. I thank all of you for your good work, which has enabled Prime Minister Modi today to take India to that level, which will make us the country to watch out for not 1 decade, not 2 decades, but hopefully for the 21st century. Thank you.
So thank you very much, sir. As usual, a very scintillating talk, very positive. So a couple of questions that have already come to me from the audience, and maybe some we can take. So you spoke about China, and I think the discussion on China does come up in every forum of interactions like these. And you also said that we are trying to increase our adequate domestic manufacturing capacity. But there is industry, more specifically the automobile industry and many others, which are still dependent on China and imports from China. So how much have we really increased our adequate domestic, is it adequate, our domestic manufacturing capacity, and what do you foresee?
Well, I see Indian manufacturing come of age, and you are in Pune, many of you, most of you, no better example of India's manufacturing skill sets and the huge talent that we have than the wonderful work that's happening in Pune. Then we would have probably 100 Fortune 500 companies also located in Pune, if not more. My own sense is the auto industry is certainly one industry where we should be really 100% indigenized. Some companies, of course, claim to be 90, 95, 99% indigenized, but I suspect it's not truly so because maybe one or two layers down, there is an import element. We have started engaging with the industry and having long conversations. The Korean industry, auto industry, Hyundai and Kia are clearly two of the laggards. They've enjoyed the benefits of our free trade agreement with Korea and Japan and continued to import indiscriminately. So they've cost us dear. And I don't mind saying it publicly also. That small investment, maybe they bought $500 million or $1 billion, has cost India very dear in terms of the billions of dollars of trade deficit they have caused us directly with Korea and with other countries. The way forward to my mind is we've been talking to Korea also to open up their markets for our products. But look at the stark difference. Korea, for example, doesn't stop any export of steel from India to Korea. So does Japan. There's no government which is stopping our export from India to Korea or Japan. But you know what? We can't sell a ton of steel in both these countries because there is a nationalist spirit. We unfortunately don't have that in India. If we can save 10 cents, we are happy to import from anybody. We are happy to strengthen China and import from China if we can make 2% more profit in our business. It's a very unfortunate and sad reality or mirror that I'm showing to our industry and our consumers. And it's high time that situation changed. Korea or Japan will buy steel from their domestic company at $100 a ton more, but will not allow an Indian company to become their supplier. No government stops it. And when we talk to the government, they say, but we have not, there's no barrier from our side. But there's that nationalist spirit that businesses there demonstrate to support their own industry. And look at us. I remember a case where I was imposing anti-dumping duty on a particular product. The DGTR findings showed that it deserved to be, there was a surge in import, we should stop it. And when I saw the product, I said, it's such a simple product. There must be domestic manufacturing. Why are they importing it? And when I found out from the importer, from the person who was manufacturing in India, who were the main consumers, I found some who were known to me. So I remember it was 11 in the night. I woke up the MD of the company, which could have been a potential consumer, but was currently importing. And I said, why don't you buy it from the Indian manufacturer? On his finished product, the impact was 2.5%, sorry. On a product of 40 rupees, 35, 40 rupees or so, 10 paise ka impact, 10 paisa. But he said, no, my systems will not allow it. I'm getting it cheaper from abroad and I will have to continue to. So I had to take the action of imposing an anti-dumping duty. Anup was there. He may even remember that particular case. Two Indian companies, of course, The other one who was a buyer was a multinational. But I don't think it is very much different for our Indian owned companies also. It's very unfortunate. But I think it's time that this awakening comes and this little bit of the national spirit, which Prime Minister Modi has very often tried to articulate and speak about. And then otherwise, we are of course trying on the government side to bring in quality control orders so that we don't allow substandard quality goods to come to India. We do create tariff barriers, but personally, I think that's not the solution. We'll have to improve our domestic manufacturing capabilities, quality of goods, meet the consumer's demand on a competitive basis. We brought out PLI schemes worth nearly $30 billion for a variety of sectors which were decided by the private sector themselves. Pawan Goenka, whom many of you will know, the ex-Mahindra CEO and now who's handling the space privatization efforts to promote space technology in India. He headed the SCALE committee, steering committee for advancing localization and promoting exports and employment. And they determined which sectors needed PLI. But that is only a kickstart. It can help you for a few years. Ultimately, Indian manufacturing will have to be competitive, will have to stand on its own legs, will have to provide quality products to the consumers. And of course, our consumers will have to be more careful or more caring for the potential that we are losing because of indiscriminate imports, even of goods which can jolly well be made in India, which includes, by the way, a lot of hotel furniture.
Sir, I think you very well said this, that, this nationalist spirit that must come within each one of us as citizens, and not look at this little 10 paise, difference, but buy from our own manufacturers. And I can quote one of the, discussions that we constantly have at the Maratha Chamber for Commerce and Industries is how MSMEs don't get paid, by big companies within the stipulated period of 45 days, that kills these smaller companies. And I think, this is the spirit that one must, at large companies must make a note of and ensure that these payments are done so that you
I'll go
encourage
one
others.
step further. And Pune has all these big industries which are totally dependent on MSMs. I'd gone to the extent of appealing, particularly when I was handling power ministry. I'd even tried to convince, right from 14, I've been trying to talk to industry. Why even 45 days? See, a large company, a Tata, or a Birla, or a Kalyani, or a Mahindras, each one of them would have the lowest cost of borrowing. They can borrow probably even today at, now Libor is gone, but let's say whatever are the benchmark rates of the Reserve Bank of India. Now, and probably at times they've been able to borrow at below repo rates also. Because now with the Reserve Bank bringing the two twin repo and reverse repo rates, very often banks prefer to lend to AAA corporates at repo or slightly below repo through commercial paper. I said, why can't you pay against delivery? They are your regular suppliers. They are borrowing at 10, 12, 14, 18% sometimes. If they don't have very good credit rating or financials, they borrow from the NBFCs at even higher rates. So if the large companies would pay against delivery, each one of the MSMEs can become more profitable, can increase their scale of operation, and may actually give you an early payment discount, much more than what it'll cost you. But I don't know why it's not found resonance with large industry. I hope Pune shows the way. Dr. Mashelkar, you catch hold of all your big industry in Pune and they all listen to you. आप एक मुहिम चलाई है इसके बारे में.
सर, हमने जो मुहिम चलाई है वो अभी हमने लिखना शुरू कर दिया मीडिया में. Ajit Ranade just wrote about this in one of the prominent newspapers. But sir, let me also tell you that since the last 2 days or 2.5 days, one topic that is resonating is climate change. And as a minister, what have you brought in for green technologies, bringing in these green businesses? So can you share some of your thoughts on this?
I don't know if you recall when Prime Minister Modi was in Gujarat those years, Al Gore had come out with his book, then famous book, Inconvenient Truth. Prime Minister Modi immediately, a few months after that, came out with his version, Convenient Action. Because the inconvenient truth in India, we recognized it few thousand years ago. We don't need somebody to come and tell us that we need to respect nature, we need to respect and protect the environment and climate. But unfortunately, over the years, the consumption levels have gone up so high, and the developed world has very conveniently transferred most of the polluting industries out of their economies, a large part of it into Asia, by the way. And while they are the largest contributors to this problem in the ozone layer or the climate change problem, they are preaching to us today about what we should be doing, despite the fact that we are only 2.5% of the contributors to carbon, having supported 16-17% of the population. I'm proud to say that this government led by Prime Minister Modi from 14 itself has focused its energies on addressing this climate change problem as a responsible global citizen. I used to be running coal, power and renewable energy, all three. And when I mentioned it at Flame this morning, everybody had a big laugh. Coal and renewable energy, both simultaneous. But there is an interplay. I mean, when President Obama was in India and everybody was preaching to us about cutting down on coal, I said, sir, we'll have to invite you for candlelight dinner the next time you come to India, if we shut down our coal-based plants. So we don't have an alternate technology anywhere in the world. We have a limitation on how much hydro we can produce. Nuclear power, China has blocked our entry into the nuclear suppliers group, the NSG. So we don't have guaranteed source of nuclear power. The world is not yet offering us safe and secure, adequate, affordable technologies so that we can venture in a bigger way in nuclear. Even then we are doing quite a bit to promote nuclear energy. Solar power is only during the day. And in fact, it has its own challenges of grid management. We cannot do beyond a stage in solar power, even during the day. And consumption hours are peak morning and evening, where we don't get solar power. Gas is not available in India, but gas also is ultimately fossil fuel. But because Europe and America depend on gas and they guzzle large amounts of petrol and diesel, they attack only coal, but not fossil fuels as a family. And this patent discrimination and unfair policies were called out by Prime Minister Modi at every occasion. And therefore today, the world recognizes his concept of lifestyle for environment, the life and sustainability movement, because ultimately we'll have to look at sustainable lifestyles. We in India are working towards that. We are promoting the circular economy so that we reuse our waste, recycle our waste. Solar power, when I was energy minister, we upped the ante from the National Solar Mission, which planned to be 20 gigawatt by 2022. Prime Minister Modi upped it to 100 gigawatt, and we achieved it. We had committed to be 40% installed capacity being clean and renewable by 2030. We achieved it in 21 itself, 9 years ahead of schedule. We are amongst the only few countries in the world which submits our UNFCCC by a 2-yearly report, biannual report to reflecting on our achievements of the Paris Accord and our nationally determined contributions. Very few countries give the 2-yearly report. We do every 2 years, sincerely and diligently. Amongst the top 5 performing nations in addressing climate change goals, India is included, top 5. In fact, in the top 10, there's no other G20 country except India. And now we have a 500 gigawatt target for renewable energy. We are conscious of our duties. We are promoting sustainable textiles, for example. By the way, PET bottles, you know what, for water, this, to my mind, is criminal. I'm sorry for whoever makes this, but this is criminal. I'll tell you why. Now, this is a glass bottle. The transporting cost is humongous. And who transports it? Diesel-driven trucks. This bottle is viable only if it is recycled 6 or 7 or 10 times. Am I right? We can't destroy it after one use. So 6 or 7 times this gets transported through diesel trucks. You have to wash this bottle every time. How much water is consumed to wash this bottle? More than the water inside this bottle. Plastic bottles are all above 50 micron. Single-use plastic is banned. Not plastic bottles per se. Those plastic bottles are crushed into PET flakes and used to make sustainable textiles, like the one Prime Minister Modi was given at the Sera, the Energy Sera Week, or Sera Energy Week in Bengaluru earlier in this month. And you remember Prime Minister Modi wearing that blue jacket in Parliament? That was made out of sustainable textiles. That's the plastic waste, which was converted into that smart jacket that he was wearing that day in Parliament when he addressed Parliament. Of course, on the other side, on the next day, we had a Louis Vuitton scarf, reflecting the different cultures that prevail in the country. I don't mean to politicize again, but that's the reality. So we are very, very focused, and therefore I think, please, I think we need to reassess. Maybe Pune International Center can reassess, because my textile industry is asking me to open up import of used plastic bottles. They are not getting enough. Can you believe it? They're not getting enough plastic bottles. They want me to allow import of used plastic bottles for sustainable textiles, which gets a premium. And they're also worried going forward, people may stop buying Indian textiles if they're not made out of recycled product. That'll give a boost to organic cotton, which is again under me. So we can get a better price for organic. And by the way, I was in Sikkim last week. It's the only organic state we have in India. And now we are going to promote exports from there in a big way. We are setting up testing labs in every district of Sikkim. We are setting up a Spice Board office. We are setting up a FSSAI office for organic testing, a PIDA office, so that we can collectively, and look at the scale I've announced there. We are going to make it happen as a country under Prime Minister Modi's leadership. We're going to make exports grow from Sikkim of agricultural organic produce from 8 crores currently to 8,000 crores by 2030. That's the target we have set as the Modi government. Eminently doable. The telecom industry has shown us the pathway. Look at the mobile industry. Over 200 companies today engaged in different forms of mobile manufacturing. Apple informally tells us they want to have 1/4 their global supply from India in the next 3 or 4 years. So the world is looking up to India. It's for us to grab the opportunity. I hope we don't fail in our green mission for lack of focus by all of us. Because if we have a 500 gigawatt solar power target, but what will we do with that power? Our grid won't be able to handle it. But if we can convert it to green hydrogen, and we've recently approved significant government support to make that happen, that green hydrogen will convert to nitrogen. I'm not a techie. I'm a poor little chartered accountant. Please pardon me if I make a goof up somewhere, but I think that will convert to nitrogen, which we do, sorry, ammonia. My apologies, to ammonia, which will then be exported to the whole world. So we have ambitious plans as a nation. And I do hope each one of you will be a part of our journey as a responsible global citizen. And we will meet our targets, rather exceed our targets. And the world today is looking up to India. I hope we don't let down the world's expectations from all of us.
I can just take one or two questions from the audience. We have Mr. Amit Paranspe. Maybe you could just introduce yourself and ask your question.
Amit Paranspe. I'm part of the Marathwada Chamber of Commerce and Pune International Center. Thank you very much for highlighting the importance of manufacturing. We here in Pune are, as you said, trying to do our bit. I just would like to highlight one point that Pune is the #1 in the country in engineering exports. So we are definitely doing our bit. And of course, we need more help from all of you to do it even better. My question is, you also talked about extensively about trade. Now going forward, how do we see these kind of FTAs panning out in the next year or so? Especially, you didn't mention countries like US, some of our other bigger partners. What kind of progress would we see there?
Well, I see good progress in some of the FTAs with countries like UK and Canada. Switzerland and the sister countries have not yet launched. I'm trying to settle the broad framework and the sensitive issues. For example, they've committed, they won't ask us to open up dairy. When I explained to them that, while we may be the world's largest dairy producer, but our millions of farmers depend on that small quantity of dairy. And we can't allow imported dairy products to come and affect pricing or the farmers of India. That's subsistence for them. 2-acre, 5-acre farmers, couple of livelihood cattle or something. You can't allow dairy to come into the country duty-free. So even similarly on patents, I can't accept anything which will restrict our pharma industry. So a few sensitive issues, if we sort out, that could also be a possibility. Europe is 27 countries, much more time consuming and much more bureaucratic in their approach. So I suspect that will take some time. The US, sadly, doesn't have congressional support to engage in free trade agreements in the future. So US, we are not doing a formal market access free trade agreement, but therefore they have devised, and the FTA approval in US needs Congress to approve it. And they don't have the ability to pass anything through Congress because there's no bipartisan support on this. So that's why the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF, has been conceptualized as an alternate framework through which, while market access may not be offered, because of which we have not yet joined Pillar 1 on trade. But we are looking at getting closer to the US in terms of resilient supply chains, our technology partnership, opening up our economies through indirect measures which go outside the realm of a free trade agreement. We have very high level and very significant and very frequent dialogues with the US. You might be reading about it. I was there last month for our trade policy forum with the USTR Ambassador Catherine Tai. Went off extremely well. And I had meetings with several CEOs. The Commerce Secretary, my counterpart. I have two counterparts in the US, USTR and Commerce Secretary. Gina is coming in on Holi on the 8th of March. And we have our commercial dialogue. And she's flying in with a huge business delegation of the top corporations of the US. Only last night, midnight, we were on a call where we were exchanging notes, and I was inviting her to come and celebrate Holi with me on the 8th so that we can give her a cultural flavor of the Festival of Color. So I think, and she's super excited, I'm told, about the way, I'm not told, she told me yesterday She's super excited about her visit to India, along with the business people. And she was telling me about some of her calls with CEOs in the US. And she says, I've had hour-long calls, as have I had with the Indian counterparts in the CEO forum. And we are both really investing huge time and capital in making the US-India come closer together and our businesses engage deeper with each other.
Thank you, sir. May I request Rujita? Rujita Jagtap is a director on the Maratha Chamber for Commerce and Industries. She also has a question.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. I represent the MSME, and of course, we are very thankful for all the initiatives that the Ministry of Commerce has taken, which are very conducive to boost the economy. So thank you so much. My question is, do we expect any specific focus areas or any kind of initiatives that you'll be taking up for actually making it easier for the MSMEs to export and also to augment their footprint in the global markets in the years to come? Thank you.
You know, naturally, any effort to increase exports will have a direct or indirect impact on MSMEs. So while many of the large PLIs support large-scale manufacturing, the reality is that large manufacturing is always on the back of a number of small MSMEs around it. Pune is a living microcosm of how Indian industry works. There would not be a single company here, large company, which would not have probably scores of MSMEs as a part of their ecosystem. And then that goes to other levels of service sector and even a dhaba contributes, the transporter contributes, hostels and small lodging houses contribute. Our workmen go to canteens. I mean, it's a whole ecosystem around large businesses. Specifically for MSMEs also, we often come up with different schemes, different promotional avenues. Though in the long run, I personally believe all of these can be measures like you kickstart a motorcycle. They can help you kickstart an ecosystem. But ultimately, we'll have to have a balance between consumers' interests and subsidies or promotions done to protect and promote a particular sector of the economy. I believe in Michael Porter's theories. We'll have to ultimately have a competitive edge, or the comparative nation, the theory about comparative economies or strengths of economy of different countries. So unless we are competitive or our comparative advantages prevail in any sector, in any industry, artificially you can promote or support a sector only up to a point. Beyond a point, it will be detrimental to the value chain that we wish to promote in India. Somewhere in the value chain, it will start hurting. And then bear in mind, I'm also Consumer Affairs Minister. So I have 140 crore consumers to look after. And consumer interests, while of course we don't want substandard products to go to consumers, even though they may be cheap, but consumer interests also demands that they get affordable products, albeit of high quality. So it's a balance that is often being created. MSMEs will always be very, very critical to India's economy. What in India's? The global economy. And all of us, our FTAs also have a lot of discussions around MSMEs, around startups. So even in our patent office, for example, I think we give I don't know whether it's 50% or more concession on all activities, trademark, copyrights, patents, all of that. For startups and women entrepreneurs, we give up to 80%. I think for the micro also now have gone up to 80%. Too many things happening around the place. But startups, women entrepreneurs get an 80% discount on anything to do with the patent office. MSME has a number of schemes. We are coming out with new schemes for footwear, for textile, a number of sectors which will naturally go to MSMEs. So it's a mix where we believe that some large industry needs to come with economy of scale and which will also benefit MSMEs indirectly. And we believe in certain sectors like garmenting. MSMEs are the way forward. or accessory manufacturing, component manufacturing, auto component manufacturing, where MSMEs will play the role.
So if you don't mind, can we take one more question?
Let 2 or 3 ask at the same time. I'll try to give a combined
Okay.
answer.
Mr. Bhargav?
Sir, I have interacted with you as CII and Maratha Chamber multiple times. My name is Pradeep Bhargav, but right now I'm talking to you as a corporate citizen, as a PIC person.
Mike, you can hold it
Yeah,
up.
can you hear me now? Yeah, so I think you answered every question, and Vidya stretched you by talking about environment, and your versatility was coming out wonderfully. You addressed questions. So this poses to me, and we as industry, as citizens, are very happy with the bridges you have built, the enablers your government has created in terms of policies, infrastructure. The issue, sir, and there's no white ball for you. You take everything, and we know your versatility. And to that extent, I'm not binding you to your portfolio, but as a consumer of it. Sir, there is something, it's a request, not a question. There are a set of people who are not in this hall. We need to bring in some dignity, equity, social security. It's all there on your roadmap, sir. By a whole lot of workforce, particularly informal workforce, the labor laws in which I've been involved and worked with you when you were in that committee also, sir. I think it's time that we address the needs of informal workers working for the formal sector and otherwise. Sir, not a complaint, just a request, because I don't think we can be an Asia emerging powerhouse if you're not inclusive. I don't think we can comfortably be here, whether it's a glass bottle or that bottle. I think we owe it to them. Sir, your government has come out with one of the most amazing laws. They're all there. Just a submission to you. Don't have to give an answer, but I think that's something that is Sarkar owes it to the people. Thank you, sir.
So I think we need to close now, and I mean, we've had enough questions for sir. So there will be a lot of hands that will be raised, but I can also see your office people also,
Just one point to supplement what you said. Clearly, if we brought out the labor laws, the intention is to get them through. But you would have seen even the education policy. We took nearly 3 years or 5 years to come out with it. It started when Prakash was the minister, probably. You're Punekar again. But we received 300,000, 3 lakh responses को study किया गया. And आप बताइए reform, education reform. इतने वर्षों से इस देश में चर्चा हो रही है. We've been discussing it for decades that education systems need to be reformed after 34 years. But tell me a single criticism that came out after the National Education Policy 2020 was unveiled. That's the nature of this government's work. It takes a little time because we engage with all stakeholders, address everybody's concerns. We would like to be a more inclusive government, which is thought-provoking, takes people's, eggs people on to give us even angular ideas, out-of-the-box solution. And that's why the education policy was successful. Zero criticism. Could you imagine education policy when the communists didn't criticize it? Forget everybody else. So I think the labor laws are going through that process. You'll see them soon. But I want to, before, I know he's also giving me hints and time is up, but one thing I'll tell you, reflect on it. What has this government done different from previous governments? Let me give you 2 or 3 cases in point. For 67 years after independence, we had half our population going to the fields or in a slum, finding a railway track or some quiet corner for their daily needs. How shameful and how undignified was that? We are all in this room. We've all lived through that period. Governments came and went. Prime ministers came and went. Did ever anybody talk about it? Did ever anybody think that our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, the indignity that they had to face? And of course, men also. Why did so many years go by? And why could we not have anybody sensitive enough to sort out that problem? We used to actually have Hindi film songs around it, but never thought of solving the problem. There was a time roti, kapda and makan what kept people engaged all their life. A little bit of small saving people would do to build their own home. कोई एक जना घर में बीमार हो गया तो वो पैसा जाता, वो तो जाता ही जाता. The person would take a loan. After all, everybody wants to give the best to his near and dear ones. एक बीमार हुआ और आदमी जिंदगी भर बॉन्डेड लेबर बन गया, वो लोन ही रिपे करते रह गया. किसने सोचा था कि 3.5 गरीब लोगों को, 3.5 करोड़ गरीब लोगों को मुफ्त में घर दिया जाए, मुफ्त. Who had ever thought of it? कोविड में नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी प्रोग्राम में तो अनाज 5 किलो या अंत्योदय फैमिलीज को 35 किलो एज अ फैमिली, इंडिविजुअल्स को 5 किलो मिलता ही था. पर कोविड में वी रियलाइज देयर इज इकोनॉमिक डिस्ट्रेस. इट वाज डबल्ड, 5 kilo extra to 80 crore people for 28 months, cost nearly 4 lakh crores. Your money. It's not, we don't have anything except the money you contribute as your taxes. But did the Indian taxpayer ever today, before 2014, ever feel satisfied when he paid his taxes कि मेरे पैसे का सदुपयोग हो रहा है? 2014 के पहले तो ये सोचा जाता था 100 रुपए भेजेंगे तो 85 रुपए तो उसमें चोरी वोरी हो जाएंगे, दलाल भ्रष्टाचारी ले जाएंगे. 15 पैसे भी गरीब को पहुंचे तो गरीब दुआ देता था. Who had thought of jam coming in? And today nearly 25 lakh crores going to the common man, to the poor man through direct benefit transfer with zero leakage. मतलब 25 लाख करोड़ आज से 20 साल पहले भेजने होते तो 2 करोड़ रुपए लगते to send 25 lakhs to the poor man. Do you realize what one nation, one ration card has done? The same प्रवासी मजदूर, unorganized labor you're talking of, जो बिहार, यूपी, ओडिशा, अलग अलग जगहों से या नॉर्थ ईस्ट से आके पुणे, मुंबई, सूरत, अहमदाबाद, तमिलनाडु, तिरुपुर में काम कर रहे हैं, उनको आज देश में किधर भी जाए एक अंगूठा दिखाना है, कुछ नहीं, कोई राशन कार्ड भी जेब में नहीं चाहिए. आपका अंगूठा ही आपका राशन कार्ड, आपका अंगूठा ही आपका बैंक अकाउंट है. One nation, one ration card. It democratized ability to get your food grains anywhere in the country. 5 lakh places you can go if you are eligible for that amongst the 80 crore poor or let's say neo middle class, lower middle class. These have been game-changing reforms. Healthcare, 50 crore people. Now, a poor man has his basic needs taken care of. रोटी मिलती है, घर मिलता है, कपड़ा आज कोई इशू है ही नहीं. हेल्थ केयर 50 करोड़ लोगों को मुफ्त में मिलता है. ये एम्पावरमेंट है, ये रेवड़ी नहीं है, ये एम्पावरमेंट है. क्योंकि आज पूरी और उसके साथ जब मोबाइल कनेक्टिविटी आ गई है एट द कॉस्ट विच इज लोएस्ट इन द वर्ल्ड, डेटा एट नो कॉस्ट ऑलमोस्ट. तो आज का युवा युवती, द यंग बॉयज एंड गर्ल्स, दे आर कंटिन्यूअसली सीइंग दुनिया में क्या हो रहा है. They are engaged, they are connected to the world. They know what's happening in the world. And that aspiration of a young demographic India, young population in India, 2/3 of which is probably below 35. That aspiration, that fire in the belly is not to feed their belly, is not to save money for a home, is for the good things of life. And that is what is going to drive the Indian economy, Indian economic growth, and will make us a $47 trillion economy by 2047. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just sum it up. So thank you very much, sir, for a scintillating talk and very, very positive. I'm sure the lady in Bangalore who said that, you know, by 2047, we can become a $47 trillion economy. It sounds very true to all of us sitting here in this very August gathering. As a doctor, sir, I definitely appreciated the vaccine Maitri program. I mean, at a time when Indians were not receiving the vaccines, but there were, people in our neighborhood who received vaccines, and it was something that I mean, we couldn't have ever imagined. And several such programs, Indians were getting it, but parallelly you were sending it out. And that time we wondered why are vaccines going out with.
I'm sorry, I just need to correct you, Dr. Vidya. We wanted to give vaccines to all the Indians first, but there are two factors. A, there was a lot of vaccine hesitancy, and we had political leaders and tall leaders who were creating a scare because of which vaccines were going across the country but were not getting administered. Due to which Prime Minister Modi said that it's better than getting them expired or wasted. We should also look at supporting other countries. Second, the West was only looking after themselves largely, and their vaccines were $30, $38, $40. Our vaccines being lower cost, Prime Minister Modi felt it's our duty as a large country, as an economic powerhouse, to support the small countries, our neighbors, the Pacific Island nations, the Caribbean countries, those who are less developed or even less privileged than India with vaccines. So we gave out vaccines. We've exported nearly, I think, 230 odd million vaccines across the world, but only to poorer, less developed and more deserving countries and our neighbors. And Vaccine Maitri, we are proud of, but we did not do it at the cost of vaccines to India. We first did it with the spare vaccines, and then after India had met its own needs. So we balanced both Vaccine Maitri and our own domestic need, lest a wrong message go from.
No, absolutely not. I was giving a reference to the finance minister of Bhutan, who was very, very appreciative of this when he spoke yesterday in this gathering. And in that context, I said that it was a commendable exercise by the government. And yes, and many of the neighboring states, not only this, but I mean, the kind of people that you brought back during COVID, through flights being, and also students that came back from Ukraine who suffered very badly. So, sir, excellent talk. We are indeed very happy that you accepted our invitation, and this was a wonderful open interaction. We hope that you come back to Pune again and come and interact with us more closely. I would only say that the things that are said in Pune generally come true. So let's hope that the $47 trillion economy statement also comes true. And we will always remember this, when we grow old, but we will be there at India at 100. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. I had lots of notes in terms of briefing you about the exhilarating Asia Economic Dialogue 2023 that we had, but I'm going to set it aside because you're electrified the entire audience. I don't want that electricity to come down. You have been absolutely amazing. So thank you very much, our most beloved, most respected Piyush Goyalji, for giving us this very, very energetic and amazingly aspirational, amazingly sort of powerful address. I will just pick 2 or 3 brief points. The first is that you have talked to us about not only Atmanirbhar Bharat, but with Atma Vishwas, and most importantly with Atma Sanman. When you said that let's not worry about that 10 paisa, but just go for the bigger purpose. There is a great message there. That's very, very important. The second, you have talked about India's transformation under the dynamic visionary leadership of our Prime Minister, and with dynamic leaders like you, with speed, with scale, with sustainability, which has never been seen before. One of the things I just want to mention to you, because our beloved PhD is here. You might remember Earth Care Awards. I was the chairman of the jury and you were the chief guest. And 7 years ago, I remember you saying that LED, light emitting diodes, which reduce the carbon footprint, you said that you are going to do an innovation on demand aggregation and bring the cost down of a 9-watt lamp from $7 to $1. And the magic happened. From 0.2% penetration to 88% penetration, we created a world record in 7 years. You kept your word. So when we talk about speed, scale, and sustainability, that's what it is. And as an aside, let me tell you, I've been a jury of a Nobel Prize equivalent in engineering called Queen Elizabeth Prize of Engineering. It won the award for light emitting diode because I mentioned exactly what you did and said that it is not just from privileged few, it is from around the world. So that is what we have been able to achieve. That's the first point. The second point I want to say is the talent, technology, and trust issue, basically. Trust in ourselves. It is not about make in India, as in assembled in India, but invent in India. I'm very happy to sort of mention Mr. Ravi Pandit, who is sitting here, KPIT Technologies. There is this NIMITLI program, New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Program, the biggest public-private partnership. He, along with the National Chemical Laboratory, Central Chemical Research, we talk about fuel cell, right? They have world's best fuel cell today. Performance, not $400 per kilowatt. They have got $400 per kilowatt as against the world, 1,000 to 1,200. It is ahead of the rest of the world. And when we talk about Make in India, 95% of the components are indigenous. It is doing downstream. India's first indigenous. So this is capability of Pune. This is capability of India. I think technology and policy combination will take this sort of way forward. That's the second point I wanted to make. And the last point I wanted to make, because I'm setting aside everything else. There was very interesting discussion on 3 Cs, COVID, conflict, climate change. I'm setting it aside. There was a fourth C also that was mentioned, by the way, that is becoming critical, chip. Semiconductor, we had a fantastic discussion. I'm setting it all aside. The last point I'd like to make is that since you talked about startup, you know, my book, you know, I've presented it to you, Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting. Startups, until 2016-17, we had 1 unicorn per year. 2021, we had almost 1 unicorn per week. To be precise, as a scientist, I have to be precise, 42, not 52, but almost. But what is more important for me is that I did an analysis of where did they come from. Do they come from IITs, IIMs, Ivy League, etc.? Close to 50% of them come from tier 3 cities, tier 2 cities. Can you just imagine? That's the new India, democratization of wealth. I think that is why India is on the go. I just don't want to take more of your time and stand between you and the lunch. Again, we are most grateful to you for sort of energizing us. I want to thank all the speakers, Minister Dr. Jaishankar, who inaugurated it and you ended it. We could not have had a better start and a better end. We want to thank both of you. We want to thank all the speakers and our team. Gautam, you will sleep well. Ambassador Gautam Pambawale has been, you know, not only the convener, but Karta Karvita, as we say in Marathi, of all this, and helped by Prashant, Girbane, Kiran, Shilpa, all of you, all of them have sort of worked very hard. So I want to thank all of them. And on behalf of Pune International Center, we like to present, yes.
PIC President will hand over a token of appreciation to our chief guest and valedictory speaker and to Dr. Vidya Yeravdekar. May I please request Ambassador Bambawale, convener of the Asia Economic Dialogue 2023, to come up on the stage, please. Thank you. May I request everyone on stage to please step forward for a group photo, kindly? Thank you. Thank you so much. We now come to the end of this conference. I want to take a moment and thank all of our student volunteers, the entire PIC team, our event management partners, and the hospitality partners for all their support, especially, and last but not the least, the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, for their unwavering support throughout the preparation and execution of AED 2023. Thank you. Wishing you all a pleasant day ahead.